This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bonini, and these are your headlines. The suffering in the Ukraine mounts and Russia sees protests against the war. At last, a law on food hygiene to protect consumers. And a husband believed his wife had met another man on social media, and in a fury, he cut off her head. But first, our headline story. The war in Ukraine has seen little movement. The Donbass region is heavily contested, and although the Russians have made advances, further north, the Ukrainians have counterattacked and reclaimed large areas around the strategically important Kharkiv. It is very much a stalemate. Foreign military aid arrives on a daily basis, and it is not only that is making the Russians uncomfortable. Despite rising popular opinion against the war, the Russians continue their campaign of destruction. Last week, we covered a story on how Russia is stealing hundreds of thousands of tons of grain, and that explosion you just saw was a direct hit on a grain silo, and this has been happening more frequently. President Zelensky has said Russia has switched tactics, and it looks like they're trying to starve the Ukrainian people. But the Ukrainians continue to fight on. This footage you're seeing now is particularly interesting. It comes from Mariupol, the city that's just been given up by the Ukrainians, where in the steelworks there, the Ukrainian army held out for weeks. The question was, how did they do it? Well, this recent footage shows a supply flight, helicopters flying into the very heart of the war zone to supply their beleaguered troops. And believe me when I tell you this, flying such a mission is almost suicidal. It takes intensely brave men to take it on. On the ground, the Ukrainian army are still devastating Russian vehicles. If you look carefully, you'll see the camera image flicker. That is when the missile is fired. And then count. It takes rather a long time for the missile that's traveling at over 100 kilometers an hour to reach its target. That shows you the range that they have. The Ukrainian artillery have also been exacting a heavy toll on Russian armor. Here we see a Russian tank, and can you see next to it that gentleman there? Well, he is one of the tank crew, and when it was initially hit, his eardrums have probably been blown. He has also been blinded. He can't find a way out. And as that second missile comes in and destroys the tank, it also destroys him. And this is sad testimony to what this war is all about. It is the loss of lives. Young men who will never see their homelands, their wives, or their families ever again. But it is not just from the air or from the artillery that the Russians are being hurt. Here we see an armored personnel carrier moving along a supply line, until, that is, it hits a landmine. The Russians are desperate to seek cover from these ongoing assaults. And here you can see the doors open on a farmyard building, and inside they have hidden their tanks. But unfortunately, the drones have spotted them, and yet again rain fire from above. The Russian army are desperate to find cover, but they have two major problems. The first is, as soon as they go off any paved highway, they leave these major tracks in the fields. And it's so easy for a drone or a pilot just to follow the tracks and know exactly where they are. But even when they're covered in a thick forest, they still shine like a beacon. The initial bad weather that greeted the Russians when they first attacked Ukraine bogged down their vehicles and held up their advance. But now spring is coming, and that warmer weather heats up their armour-plated vehicles. And when a drone switches to infrared, it's almost impossible not to see them. There has been unrest in the fields of the Ukraine, but also back home in Russia. Here we see lawmakers protesting the war. What this brave gentleman is saying is, we, the lawmakers, are appealing to you, the Legislative Assembly, to support families of men killed and injured. We demand an immediate withdrawal of Russian troops. And that's all he pretty much gets out, before he's shouted down by the people in power. But it's not so easy to quieten the voices of thousands of people. At a large rock concert in St. Petersburg, there was an unusual protest, because these kind of things are banned, as everyone started to chant Gun Vai Ye, which roughly translated means, we disapprove of your military operation. There have been over 800 confirmed cases of monkeypox, the WHO reports. That is triple the cases reported a week ago. The figure for the past 3 weeks is probably an underestimation, and the WHO assesses the global risk as moderate and advises people to be vigilant. This is the first time monkeypox has spread widely outside of Central and Western Africa, which is an alarming trend. In its latest update, the WHO announced some countries are reporting new cases appearing outside of known contacts, meaning there has been many undetected virus cases circulating from an untraceable carrier. While the current risk to human health for the general public remains low, the public health risk could become high if the virus becomes widespread in countries where it's not normally found. The WHO stressed that no deaths have been reported as a result of the current outbreak, and a Cambodian health spokesperson said this week, "We are on alert and we are taking precautions to ensure monkeypox is not brought into the country." WHO representative to Cambodia, Dr. Lee Alan, added people with full-blown symptoms of monkeypox will have obvious skin disruptions, from rashes to pustules, so infectious people are visually identifiable, and assured that monkeypox will not cause a pandemic the way COVID-19 did. It is frightening to have another disease running rampant, but the risks at current are very low. We all see stalls selling cooked food by the side of the road. The thought that crosses my mind is it safe? As hygiene standards are often rather dubious. Well, now, for the first time, there is a law to protect consumers from vendors who care little for quality or for hygiene. Cambodia's draft law provides for strict action to be taken on hygiene, expired products, and improper labelling. Food vendors, restaurant owners, and manufacturers now face heavy penalties for non-compliance. The draft law has been 7 years in the making. The process began all the way back in 2015. The draft involved 6 ministries, and this could be one of the reasons for the length of time it took to get to a draft level. Ministries involved included the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Industry, Science, Technology and Innovation, the Ministry of Commerce, the Ministry of Consumer Protection, and the Ministry of Tourism. That's a whole load of chefs in one kitchen when cooking up a new law on food standards. The Director of Consumer Protection said, Many have been trading without any regard for the consumer's health. Although we knew about it, we could do nothing, as there was no law to allow us to act in the public interest. Quite astonishingly, there was absolutely no law at all. Vendors could act as they pleased and serve absolutely anything they wished, with no regard to their customers. Unsafe food can contain bacteria, viruses, and parasites, which may cause severe disease, and there is no doubt at all that some have died from this issue. The law is long overdue, and all will agree this is of great benefit to the consumers. About 80% of Cambodian children aged between 12 and 16 are living under psychological stress because of their parents' debts. According to a recent report, the explosion in microfinance loans and the lack of knowledge and care taken when applying for these loans are now causing severe anxiety within many families. The statement issued by Global Alliance, a group of 6 international organisations working for children's rights, said, about 80% of the children and youths interviewed said that their parents were encountering economic problems, being in debt and having issues paying for basic needs such as food, transportation and school fees. Many children said that they were very worried about the future, and it is causing them great concern to see their families suffering. In addition, children and adolescents are reporting alarming levels of mental health problems. 67% of those surveyed reported some form of emotional violence, such as being bullied. Dr. Mengle, a public health specialist, believes that the problems associated with indebted parents will have a devastating effect on children. Some families repay debts by selling off their only assets, such as land, while some are even forced to flee the country to escape crushing debt. According to the report, these issues put direct and indirect pressure on children who feel they now have an obligation to earn as much money as possible to help support their ailing families, and it is often at the cost of their education and of their future. A crime so ghastly and gruesome was committed by a husband against his own wife. It is simply spine-chilling to consider what this man did. He did not only murder his wife, he then cut off her head and placed it in a sack before throwing it in the rubbish. To amplify how horrendous this crime is, the act of cutting off someone's head takes a zeal and determination that is rarely matched. It is extremely difficult, and it is as time-consuming as it is gory. The 27-year-old man slit his wife's throat in a rage of jealousy, and after she had bled to death, he went about his gruesome work, like some Victorian villain working by the light of a gas lamp. Neighbours said the couple moved into the room in February and quarrelled almost every night. They said he was a jealous and violent man and assaulted his wife often. That was until the night when the husband accused his wife of having an affair with a man she met on social media. His previous violent assaults now led him to the most heinous of criminal acts. During the argument, he bludgeoned his wife. He then took a cleaver and slashed her throat. And in his confession, he admitted, after slashing her throat, he beheaded her and put her head in a sack and threw it in a rubbish site nearby. As to why he thought beheading his wife would somehow cover up the crime is as mysterious as the crime itself is revolting. Did he think that the headless corpse lying on his lodging's floor would in some way be untraceable? It is utterly baffling as to what this man was thinking. The husband has appeared in the courts and he now faces a life sentence. Now it is time to have a look at our sports news. The UEFA National League is on, and defending champions France have played 2 games and only secured a single point after being held by Croatia to a 1-1 draw. Didier Deschamps made 10 changes from the side that threw away their previous game when they went down to Denmark last Friday. They looked on course for a victory this time when they took the lead, but Karamak scored a fine penalty after the video referee awarded him a spot kick, following a foul by Jonathan Klaus. Denmark are now top of the group and 6 points clear after winning 2-1 in Austria. And France, well, they face an uphill battle to even reach next year's National League finals. Let's have a look at our weather and see what next week has in store. And here it is, and it's about as surprising as finding your neighbour has way too many dogs and they keep you awake by barking at night. It's rain across the board throughout the whole weekend and progressing into next week, but you need to turn your eyes upwards and look at that humidity, 90%. It's going to be sticky. This has been the Khmer Times News. You can contact myself at the studio by mailing us at ktnewsstudio@gmail.com. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next Saturday for your weekly Roundup.